Hey humans and Gelflings, welcome back to part 2 of the making of my Deet cosplay. So if you missed part 1, be sure to go check it out for materials, fabric dyeing, and pattern making. At this point in the making process, New York Comic Con is only 2 weeks away and we have a lot to do. Today we'll be focusing on sewing, weathering, and the detailing process. Details. Yeah. Remember that there's no one right way to do all this. This is just the way that I chose to do things, and you can do it however you see fit. This might be a lot, so strap yourselves in, Gelflings, and let's get started! Now that we have our pattern pieces, I'm going to go ahead and start cutting everything out. Sometimes I like to cut it a little bit larger than necessary, that way I can take it in later if needed. Here you can see the 4 smaller coat flaps, 2 for the front and 2 for the back. And here are the back pieces. This was my interpretation before I knew what was actually going on with the back, which includes 2 more flaps that rest over top of the wings and layers of chiffon underneath. Here are my 2 front panels, and finally the main flaps, 1 for the front and 1 for the back. Now I'm going to go ahead and start pinning my pieces together, starting with the underdress layer made from my freshly dyed muslin. I'm pleating just the tops of the shoulders to give it that whimsical extra little peak at the top. And for the skirt wrap that goes underneath, I'm going to cut out roughly 15 strips of this cotton gauze. I'm going to start with the underdress layer. Of course, trying pieces out periodically just to make sure they're going to fit. Next, I'm going to start the coat, starting again with the top. Because this fabric is much stiffer, I need to make sure it's tailored better to my body shape so there's no weird bunching happening. It would be a good idea to make a mock-up first, especially when you're working with expensive, or in this case, custom-made fabrics. But due to my time crunch, I just decided to go for it and hope for the best. Now that turned out not to be such a great idea since I underestimated how much fabric I would need for the outer coat. So the sleeves ended up being a little bit smaller than I intended. They weren't the luscious sleeves I was hoping for, but they worked. I tried not to make this 9 hours of me sewing, but that's the reality of it, so hang in there. I know that these are some really weird pattern pieces, so right here I am just attaching the sleeves. Next, I'm going to pin these flap pieces onto the top part and see where I want them to fall. Once I have all the lengths worked out between the coat and the dress and the skirt, I'm going to stitch all the green cotton gauze strips down to a belt, which is also made out of a cotton gauze strip, so it just ties in the back. Now for the gloves, I'm going to take my brown cotton gauze strips and wrap them around my hands like so, and leave both the green and brown strips flowing by the wrists as well. Once the small flaps are stitched, I'm going to go ahead and add the large back flap to the coat. And although not depicted here, I'm adding the big front flap to the skirt wrap. As mentioned before, this is so I can close the coat in the front. Then we're going to add the collar, and this one is just about done. Lastly, I'm going to stitch a strip of Velcro to fasten the 2 front pieces together so they fit nice and snug when I close the coat. With the sewing done, it's time for weathering! Weathering is the process of making fabrics look worn and distressed, which is especially needed for this character. I'm going to add a very watered down acrylic to my airbrush and then just go ham with it. If you don't have an airbrush, don't worry. You can get a similar effect using paintbrushes, sponges, or anything else that you see fit. I just love the smooth and natural effect that you can get with airbrushing. I'm going to go all around the edges of the flaps and the sleeves. Also making sure to protect the parts that I don't want to be airbrushed. I did some of these front strips with the airbrush, but I ended up going back with the brush and redoing them a little bit darker. After I made the crochet scarf into a little bag, I'm going back and giving it this distressed look too. I then used my reference photos to make a knotted belt similar to Deet's, and this is the last piece that needs weathering. I'm going back in with my airbrush and then some paints for the knot crevices. It is Sunday, the weekend before the con. Things are finally coming together. We have the dress piece and the outer layer. Still need quite a bit of detailing work. I wanted some more precise lines for these flaps, which is why I went in with a paintbrush and not an airbrush to do these. I also went back and darkened some of these edges because I really liked that almost burnt kind of look. I later noticed the subtle gold detailing on Deet's coat and picked up some gold glitter glue from AC Moore. I love the magical element that this added to the coat. And for the finishing touch, I'm going to add the beads onto the coat and hair. Congratulations on making it through part 2. Hopefully you found some helpful tips, general inspiration, or at least a little bit of entertainment. I will see you all very shortly for part 3. We'll be doing Gelfling ears, makeup, and putting the whole thing together, so don't miss it. Or you could just subscribe so you get the notification. My name's Danny. I'm sitting on a trash can. Go make something cool. Yeah.